Now, we've each shown you how we want our lures to look, how you want it to be laying on your hook so that it has the right presentation. But here's where things really get interesting. The technique is so different. I want my worm to barely move. It doesn't want to be a fast-moving lure at all. On the other side of it, you want your lure to be skimming along the surface, escaping like a frog, just a horny toad going across that water.
Right, right.
So we're giving totally different presentations, and that's what's going to be interesting to watch. We're going to see which is more effective, and we'll just go from there. Just a small one here, but let me bring them around here, Will. Well, you got to get through the small ones to get to the big ones, and this time of the year, one of the phenomenons of this kind of fishing, which is essentially post-spawn in this area, is you've still got the males and females pretty much together. The males are still actively around those beds, and so you get a lot of these small males as well as some of these big females that may have moved off just a little bit. The neat thing about what Will and I are doing is both of our techniques work in heavy cover. And that's what we had to do. There's a lot of other baits that we love to use. There's a lot of other techniques that we love. But they might not be appropriate for where the fish are. We know the fish are in this heavy cover, so this is why we've selected what we've done. Now, even a surface lure isn't as effective once the cover gets thick because it can't, like a surface plug, can't go through it the same. It's going to get fouled up all the time. Now, one of the problems in using a worm is they get all chewed up, and you have to decide whether it's reached the point where you can't do anything more with it. I've caught about 5 fish on this worm, and it's pretty hard to reposition it on the hook every time, but I think we can get a fish or 2 more out of it.
Okay, what we're going to be doing here is I'm going to throw this frog out. Throw it over the top of the lily pads, and we're going to swim it across the top of the lily pads. Now, the feature that this frog has are these little legs on it. And when you throw it out there, these little legs, as soon as you hit the water and as soon as you start reeling, the water catches these little hooks on the legs, and it swims the bait. It actually makes the bait look like it's kicking on top of the water, like you would see with like a buzz bait type bait.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. The first time I saw him throwing it, I thought you had a buzz bait on.
Yeah. So what it does is it comes across the water, and these little legs kick. That's what causes the motion, really gets the fish turned on. It really gets their attention.
All right, let's see you catch one now.
Let's see if we can do this. Let's make a cast here.
See it?
You see as I'm reeling it here. See?
Ooh!
Right there, he already attacked.
Holy cow! That was fantastic. That was fantastic.
That was a really nice pike.
Was that a pike or a bass?
Now that was a pike.
Okay.
But you can see these legs and the action that it was doing on the water was that little kicking action. We'll try it again.
Think he'll hit again?
If he's a pike, he'll hit again. And you see the action of the bait. It kind of looks like a buzz bait coming through the water. There's a big largemouth. Real big.
Ooh, it is a good one. Boy, that's a nice one.
Real big. Nice largemouth.
Boy, you did a... Wow. Wow.
Yeah, let's get him in a boat.
He's barely got that hook in him.
Now you see there.
Boy, that's
You
a
see
nice
with the
bass.
frogs, this is how the largemouth will take those frogs right in their mouth. Right in. They take it right in.
Boy, he was barely hooked though, you know that?
Yeah, he was barely hooked. His hook just barely... Well, actually, we got him in the hard part of the cartilage, so I don't think that would have came out. Just pop that out.
That's a nice bass.
That's a nice...
You did good.
About 4 pounds.
Yeah.
4 1/4 pounds.
Boy, I'll tell you what.
Give him a kiss, Don.
No, I'm not going to kiss
Come on,
him.
buddy.
You kiss him. You kiss him.
Well,
He's worth a good kiss. She's worth a kiss. Well, I'll tell you what. That was a nice bass. Like I said, there's more to it than just meets the eye, because not only have you shown them how to rig the lure, but the type of tackle you use is really sort of tailor-made to this kind of fishing. So explain that. Explain the line, first of all.
Okay, what I'm using here is I'm using a 50-pound spider wire. It's a 50-pound super line. Okay, and the reason why I'm using a 50-pound test is because we're fishing around lily pads. And if anybody, fishermen out there who have fished around lily pads know, the lily pads got a stem like, the size of my finger. So what this does, this super line, is when the bass takes the bait and he takes it back down into the lily pads, what you can do is when you set the hook and you pull them, what this line does is it rips through those lily pads. It practically cuts the stem of the lily pads right off so that you can really horse the fish out. And what also you need is I'm using a really stout rod. See how thick the end is here? Because I'm fishing in really heavy cover. And what this rod does is it helps me pull those fish, literally crank those big bass out of the lily pads. It's like dragging them out of the lily pads. And a really stout rod with the 50-pound line, the 50-pound spider wire line, really cranks them out of the heavy cover.
All right, now I got another thing to throw in here, Will, or a question to ask you. A lot of people would use this bait, and they throw out there and they get all kinds of strikes and they'd be excited and they miss an awful lot of fish. How important is the rod in setting the hook, or is it more important the line in setting the hook because this isn't stretching?
Well, actually, the line is more important in setting the hook than the rod is, because this line, it has virtually no stretch to it. So when you take up your line, when you see the fish, when you see him come up and you hit your bait, you pause for a second or two, and when you take up the line and you set the hook, you don't have to yank the rod in order to get the fish, in order to hook him. Just that little bit, because it has virtually no stretch to it. Just that little hook set will sink the hook and will drive the hook right in.
And yet, if you're using a rod like mine with thin mono, not only are you probably going to get snagged up and lose the fish once he wraps around the lily pad, but there's an awful lot of fish that are going to get off, because by the time that mono stretches and the rod stretches, you're going to miss that strike, because remember, that hook point is already buried in that frog to keep it weedless. So you gotta do a little bit more, and that's what Will's doing. Let's go see if we can catch some more fish.